Hey guys! Today we'll be recapping a manhwa called Into the Light Once Again. Please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video. It really helps our channel. Thanks. Our story centers around the 5th princess of the Edenbell Empire, Marianne. Adorable, well-mannered, and friendly, she's basically your textbook princess. When Marianne smiles, no one can look away. Her golden eyes captivated everyone she came across, and her personality won their hearts. But this story isn't about Marianne. It's about her sister, Marianne's perfect opposite in every way. With black hair and green eyes, she isn't adored the way her little sister is, but that doesn't mean she loves her any less. Unlike Marianne, she has to endure a lot of harsh comments about her appearance. People always compare the sisters, calling her a black crow in comparison to the shining light of Edenbell. But she put up with it for her sister's sake. That is, until the day she was accused of poisoning her. Our protagonist, Alyssa, invited Marianne for tea on a beautiful spring day, hoping to share some precious tea she'd been gifted as a gift. Before Alyssa could take a sip, blood started to drop from Marianne's lips, and the next second, she collapsed. You can imagine what happened next. Rumors started flying about the evil Princess Alyssa, who must have been planning this from the start. Alyssa went from outcast princess to shame of the nation to prisoner in a single day. They lock her in a small cell underground and feed her one meal a day with no news about her sister or what would become of her. Then one day, 2 guards appear and lead her through the grounds in chains. After all that time underground, Alyssa is so grateful to see the sunlight that she smiles and mentions how beautiful it is. That really rubs the guards the wrong way, so they throw her inside the throne room where she finds herself staring up at the other members of the imperial family. Uh-oh, I've got a bad feeling about this. Marianne is there too, thankfully unharmed. Before Alyssa can even express her relief, they're listing off her sentence. Charged with the attempted murder of the 5th princess Marianne, she is cruelly sentenced to death. Can you believe that? How could a family do such a thing to one of their own? Behind them all, smiling like a devil, is little Marianne. Did she have something to do with this? The 1st and 2nd princes, Lachias and Elsis del Edenbell, clearly have no sympathy for their younger sister. The 3rd princess, Adelina, looks straight up happy to hear the news, while little Prince Lelis is putting on a brave face. The emperor, Eulis del Edenbell, asks his daughter if she pleads guilty to her crime. He is thoroughly convinced that she is the one behind the poisoning, and even says it's disgusting that she's continuing to feign innocence. What kind of a father is this guy? Holding back tears, Alyssa struggles to answer. Her sister Adelina steps forward and demands she answer the emperor, glaring fiercely at her. Is there not one person in this family who cares for her? Even baby Lelis is being harsh. Part of the reason for their unwavering cruelty is that they have a supposed witness to the crime. Next walks in a maid named Rebecca, one of the women who works in Alyssa's palace. She was there on the day they had tea and claims to have seen Alyssa pouring a mysterious white powder into Marianne's cup. Obviously, that's not true, but whoever is framing her has done a darn good job. They even planted the same powder in her bedroom closet. Alyssa begins to weep, swearing on her life that she never once tried to harm her sister. She turns to her eldest brother, Crown Prince Lachias, looking for sympathy. Instead, she gets a slap. He tells their father not to wait a moment longer and even suggests burning her eyes out before they behead her. What kind of sick little psycho? I can't believe these people. Her father orders the guards to give her nothing but filthy water as they drag her away, setting the date of her execution in 4 days' time. When the day finally arrives, Alyssa isn't totally sane anymore. I mean, can you blame her? Her entire family turned on her and never even let her defend herself. As if that wasn't bad enough, they actually took Lachias' suggestion of burning her eyes. Literally and figuratively blinded by the pain, Alyssa begged Selena, the goddess of the moon and revenge, to give her a chance to get revenge, or at least prove her innocence. And if that's not possible, she never wants to be reborn as a human again. Now, I don't know about you guys, but somehow, I don't think that's going to happen. But Alyssa doesn't seem to get the hint. When she opens her eyes, reborn as a precious baby girl with silver hair and ocean blue eyes, she thinks Selena has abandoned her. At least this life is starting off better than her last one. She's already adored by her maids and family alike, and yes, you guessed it, she's a princess again. This time, she was born as Aisha, the 1st princess of the Elmer Empire, the Edenbell's greatest rivals. The crown prince, little Prince Isis, is already obsessed with her, and And who wouldn't be? Her jewel-like eyes and soft silver hair have already earned her the nickname Elmer's one and only star. At this rate, she'll be rivaling Marianne in no time. Isis tries to make friends with his sister, but that's not an easy task with a 10-month-old baby. Aisha is hesitant to connect with him at first, but she listens intently once he begins to tell her the story of her birth. He always wanted a little sister, but his mother was frail, making it impossible for her to have another child. 2 years ago, she passed away and was replaced by Empress Iris, who gave birth to Aisha. Instead of being jealous and resentful of these new additions, Isis is grateful to have a family again. What a sweet kid! The Empress herself then arrives, delighted to see her stepson and daughter getting along so well. The Emperor, Tyrion de Elmer, is right behind her. Tyrion was originally a war hero known for having subdued the neighboring nations and creating a route known as the Path of Glory, which links all of the Elmer Empire. Nowadays, he is known for his outstanding diplomacy skills and wise decision-making. When Aisha was born, he gave out gold coins and bread to those who were starving, gave pardons to prisoners, and gave thanks to God himself. Who is this guy? He seems like some kind of saint. Aisha couldn't have found a more perfect family for her fresh start at life. But the more love she receives, the more she is haunted by memories of her past. While trapped in her cell as Alyssa, she was once visited by Marianne. Instead of pitying her, she just laughed and said she wanted to see how pathetic Alyssa looked before being sentenced to death. Wow, does she even have a soul? Her eyes turned red in the shadows as she taunted her sister and promised to meet her on the execution ground. To give you guys a little more context, Marianne was born to a common woman but accepted into the royal family because of her golden eyes. Alyssa was born from the same mother as the crown prince, but even that didn't stop him from turning on her and ordering her eyes to be burnt out. That's why it's so hard for Aisha to stomach the love and affection little Isis is giving her now. She swears never to believe him and never to love him. That way she can never be betrayed again. Isn't that sad? It also sounds kind of impossible given just how much affection the prince is showering her with. A few months later, Aisha has hit her first birthday. She's still well loved, though by now there are rumors floating around that there's something wrong with her, probably on account of her reserved attitude. She still hasn't spoken yet and rarely expresses her emotions, which is unusual for a child of her age. Of course, she could speak if she really wanted to. She's just too scared to try. In moments like these, she is comforted by special orbs of light which have been by her side since birth. No one but Aisha can see them, proving her status as a special enchantress, one who can see the entities that exist in the natural world. She is able to converse with these spirits who comfort her even when the servants are filled with doubts. Her mother also believes in her and frequently reassures the princess that she can take as much time as she needs. While the maids are discussing her upcoming birthday, the Emperor visits to see his wife and daughter, who he affectionately pats on the head. Empress Iris offers to let him hold her, but the Emperor doesn't seem to know how to hold a baby. It's also possible that he's just overwhelmed by her cuteness. I think that's more likely. Iris reassures Tyrion that his daughter is perfectly healthy, encouraging him to take her in his arms. While cradling her, the Emperor decides to hold a banquet in honor of her birthday for 1 whole month. He's so obsessed with his daughter that he would throw a party for a whole month? Is that even possible? But the Emperor is 100% serious. He thinks it's a perfectly reasonable occasion and wants to spare no expense either. Aisha is a little stressed at the idea of being on show for an entire month, but her mother seems to have given in already. You see, when the Empress first joined the palace, things were quite difficult for her. The last Empress, Saintess, Prince Isis's mother, was well liked, and many of her people were still spread across the palace. Unlike Saintess, Iris was not a princess, but the daughter of a marquise, so she feared for the safety of her children, who might be considered second to those of holy royal blood. So when the Emperor showered his affection for her daughter in such a grand way, her heart was put at ease. Iris is the daughter of the Russell family, a Marquise bloodline who guard the northern border. They rarely come to the capital, so a month-long banquet is a good excuse to invite them down to stay. It's a double win for the Empress, just not for her daughter. The contrast to her old life is painfully obvious. Alyssa's mother didn't care for her, and the Emperor only cared about Crown Prince Lachius. Oh, and evil Marianne, of course. Aisha falls asleep in her mother's arms and wakes up alone in her bedroom at night. I'm not sure what kind of people let a baby sleep all alone in a big bed like that, but apparently that's just the way this palace runs. Once again, Aisha is visited by her spirit friends. All of a sudden, they start to cluster at her window. The next moment, they transform into a man with blonde hair and golden eyes, surrounded by the orbs of light. Aisha is terrified, as you would be if a random adult man appeared in your bedroom at night. But he doesn't make any sound and quietly walks towards her, communicating only through his willpower, which is kind of like telepathy. The orbs morph into tiny little fairies who say, "I see the king." It sounds like some kind of prophecy, but Aisha is still too scared to respond. Seeing that she won't respond, the strange man decides he's come too early and presses a finger against her head, erasing all memory of their interaction and sending her straight to sleep. Wait, but who was he? Is this like the manhwa version of Men in Black? I guess we'll never know, because when her maid comes to wake her the next morning, Aisha doesn't remember a thing except the moon. She goes on with her daily life as usual and spends most of her time learning how to walk with the Empress. She's too nervous to try the other things, but with this, Aisha tries her very best. Maybe because each step feels like a step closer to freedom, but with her tiny little body, she can only stay upright for so long. And every time she sees the Empress cheering her on, it brings back memories of the past again. Alyssa's mother, Empress Edenbell, never looked at her with half the love that Iris does now. She only held her to put on a good show in front of the nobles, but even though it was fake, Alyssa always enjoyed the warmth of her mother's arms. Shaking off her memories, Aisha attempts to take another step with her mother and maids cheering her on. Even a little tumble isn't enough to shake her determination. In a moment, she is back on her feet, doing her best to stay stable as she toddles towards her mother. Aw, she's so cute when she's determined. A few days later, Iris's parents, the Marquise and Marquess Russell, arrive for the birthday bonanza, excited to see their granddaughter for the first time. They're very affectionate, just like their daughter, who is overwhelmed with joy to be reunited with her parents. She asks about their territory in the north and how relations had been with Edenbell. Wait, Edenbell? As in Alyssa's family from the Edenbell Empire? They head inside, where the Marquise explains that things have been quiet since the peace agreement, so clearly there's been some tension between the two families in the past. They're a little suspicious because there's a rumor going around that the Edenbell family will send an envoy and a gift to Aisha's birthday banquet. Aisha is immediately terrified that someone from the royal family will show up. She starts to cry, causing concern among her relatives, who joke that she hates the Edenbells just as much as the rest of them. They don't realize just how right they are. Her mother takes her for a little walk through the corridors, trying to calm her down. The tension eases when the Emperor and Prince arrive, eager to see their favorite ladies and share a cup of tea. Isis plays with Aisha, promising to always protect her like a big brother should. He lifts her up and whispers that he's preparing a special birthday present for her. Aisha can't help it. She's finally starting to get a little excited about her big day. And so is the rest of the Empire. The nobles are all keen to meet the girl who the Emperor loves enough to throw a month-long celebration for. On the day the banquet begins, the Empress and Princess are dressed in two gorgeous, matching dusky rose ball gowns. Even Isis is all dressed up in his fancy little uniform, begging to carry his sister into the banquet hall himself. The nobles are already gathered inside, waiting for the guests of honor to arrive. Aisha is really nervous, but at least with her brother and mother by her side, she won't ever be alone. The Emperor joins them on a balcony overlooking the hall, welcoming the nobility of the Elmer Empire. He invites everyone to celebrate his daughter and enjoy the one-month-long party, while they cheer and applaud down below. After the welcome speech is over, the imperial family descend into the crowds, where everyone immediately starts gushing over Aisha's adorable angelic appearance. Reluctantly, Isis hands her over to the Emperor, who has apparently got over his fear of holding babies now that the whole empire is watching them. The rest of the party runs smoothly after that. Aisha is baptized with holy water from the God of Light, and then the nobles line up to offer gifts to the princess. That's when the envoy from Edenbell arrives. At first, Aisha spots the blue eyes and thinks it's the crown prince, her brother Lachias. But when the guest lowers his hood, he reveals himself as Arisen, the son of a duke who is talented in magical arts. He seems fascinated by her bright blue eyes, which are the mark of a witch in the Edenbell Empire. Arisen was Aisha's best and probably her only friend in her past life, so seeing him now is both heartwarming and heartbreaking. They were only 3 years apart, but it seems like he's become much more powerful now, since he's representing the Edenbell family abroad. He kneels down to present a magical stone with special magic designed to protect the wearer. After Arisen, the last to present their gift is Prince Isis. But he doesn't have any old jewel or flower to give her. No, he wants to swear his oath as a knight and dedicate his life to protecting his Aisha. He really just raised the bar for brothers everywhere. Aisha is shocked, and she doesn't want him to lay his life down for her sake, even hypothetically. She starts to cry, but Isis rushes to assure her that he knows what he's doing. With or without an oath, he's already promised to protect her his whole life anyhow. So what's the difference in making it official? Aisha still thinks he's being stupid, but she can't deny how much it warms her heart. She doesn't protest as her father knights his son, allowing him to swear on his sister's behalf. The nobles are delighted. Now her official knight, Isis takes her to a good spot to watch the fireworks, which are utterly magical. She finally feels at peace with him and is starting to become more optimistic about this new life. So she decides to speak his name, so quietly that she doesn't think he heard it at first. But that boy doesn't miss a thing. Once he realizes she just said her first word and it was his name, he starts to cry. Oh my gosh, they're just too precious. She was kind of hoping he wouldn't notice, but now he's begging her to say it again. Hearing the commotion, the Emperor and Empress come running, worried that something bad has happened. But Aisha has finally decided to open her heart to this new world, so she confidently calls each of them by name, making everyone cry. She doesn't know it, but Arasun is watching from below. Strangely, he's reminded of the Edenbell imperial family, who seem to be getting on just fine without Alyssa. The only one who misses her is Arasun. When his master arrives, he admits that he doesn't understand why she had to die. He was studying in the wizard's tower at the time, so by the time he found out, it was already too late. Even now, he still sees her from time to time when he wakes up. With tears streaming down his face, he swears never to forgive the Edenbell family and vows to investigate the truth surrounding Alyssa's accusation. Surprisingly, his sullen old master agrees to help, only on the condition that he massage his shoulders from time to time. Sounds like a fair trade if you ask me. Now, we fast forward to 6 years in the future. Aisha is now a cheerful little 7-year-old who seems much more comfortable with her new life. Isis is older too, but no less fond of his baby sister than when she was little. While she's reading in the gardens, he comes to sit beside her, impressed that she's already studying such advanced subjects at her age. Well, that's what happens when you've lived 2 lives, I guess. You get reborn as a genius. She started demonstrating her talents from the age of 3, when she finally relaxed into her new family. She started learning to read at the age of 3, impressing everyone with her memory and writing skills. The Elmer language is different to the one spoken in the Edenbell Empire, but she got a hang of it pretty quickly. Soon she graduated onto ancient letters, hoping to read old texts about spirits in the Imperial Library. You have to give it to her. This girl is one smart cookie. I know if I was reborn, I sure as heck would not be using my second life to study. Despite her success and how people keep praising her as a genius, Isis has never considered her a competitor to his position as heir. Which is good, since Aisha has no desire to take over the throne. All she wants is revenge on the Edenbell Empire. That's why she's trying to get information on spirits, hoping to use her natural-born talents to her advantages somehow. And if you are wondering how the Edenbell family is doing, unfortunately, things are going well. Marianne has been honored as a saint, though I can't imagine why, and Lachius is going to have his enthronement ceremony as crown prince this year. More than anything, Aisha is curious about Marianne's blood-red eyes. She only saw them twice in the days before her death, but they were creepy enough to stick with her. There's definitely some twisted meaning behind them. Back in the present, Isis is commenting that he often feels she's older than him because of how smart she is. Aisha reminds him that he's also a genius. Even at his age, he's already one of the most talented knights in the Empire. Just as they're about to head back to the palace, Isis tells her she can always lean on him when things get tough. He's such a cutie, literally the definition of a golden retriever. When Aisha returns to the palace, she's informed that the Empress is looking for her. You see, things are very busy in the palace at the moment. The Elmer Empire has a festival that corresponds with every season. The Springtime Festival is about showing gratitude to the gods, so all the palace staff and the Empress herself are busy preparing for the ceremony. Fortunately, Iris is a good mother and always makes time for her daughter when she can. They haven't seen each other in 4 days, so Aisha is full of questions about the ceremony and how she's been. After their chit-chat, Iris brings up a scholar by the name of Almond, an academic professor in charge of her studies. Aisha suddenly panics, wondering if she's about to get scolded. But her mother only has positive things to say, reporting that the scholar was incredibly impressed with her academic abilities. Iris confesses that she hasn't been worried about her daughter before. But now that an official professor has confirmed she's basically a genius, the Empress is concerned about Aisha's career path. I mean, they can't just let her sit around the palace all her life. Her mother gives her a chance to think it over slowly and promises to make any opportunity available if she wants it. In the meantime, the spring ceremony will be a good chance for her to make some friends of her own age, something the princess is severely lacking. Aisha makes a good point that her father and brother are too protective to let her go out and make friends, but the Empress promises to convince them. As she should. Every princess needs a couple besties. After finishing her elementary book on ancient languages, Aisha is back to the library for something a little more challenging. There's not time to read everything, so she's hoping she can use her very basic understanding to read an ancient book on spirits and fast forward her research. Luckily, she just so happens to find exactly the book she's looking for. She's about to go home and start reading when the spirits point her to another book, one about magic. Aisha's not about to ignore a direct request from the ancient spirits, so she takes that one with her too. On her way out, she runs into Isis in the hallway, quickly hiding the book she borrowed. Or at least she tries to. Isis catches sight of the book, so she hurriedly explains that it's another book on ancient languages. She tries to run away before he can ask any more questions, but her brother isn't interested in snooping. He just wants to praise her for how hard she's been working in class. Looks like someone else heard the news of that scholar calling her a genius. He also mentions her future, but reassures his baby sister that there's no pressure. The family will support her no matter what she chooses to do. Isn't this all a little too much pressure to be putting on a 7-year-old? Like, I know she's smart, but damn! Finally, alone in her bedroom, Aisha has the chance to pore through the ancient book and learn some fascinating facts about the history of the spirits. Although she can't read super well in the ancient language, she's still able to pick up a rough idea of what happened. The only issue is, it doesn't say anything about people who can see spirits from birth. But it does have information on how to summon spirits. Bingo! In order to summon, a user needs both mana and spirit. They can form a summoning contract which will bind a spirit to their will. Unfortunately, it doesn't have any information on how to actually do that. Ancient books are always so vague. Intrigued by the other book the spirits pointed her towards, Aisha picks up the magic book. And what do you know? Literally the first page she turns to has the instructions for low-level spirit contracting. With these two texts combined, Aisha has enough information to try and make her own contract. She sketches out a basic rune on paper and places her hand on top, reciting a special incantation. Obviously, because she's a child prodigy and a reborn princess, it works on her first try. The paper starts to glow, and from within the rune appears a tiny golden fairy. And this fairy isn't just any spirit. Aisha recognizes her voice at once and realizes this is the same spirit who has been by her side since she was little. To form the contract, the fairy gently kisses Aisha's forehead and suddenly bursts into her physical form. She introduces herself as Lu, a low-level light spirit. Isn't she just the cutest? She explains that when contracted, spirits are given an entity which resides in the human world. That's why she now has a body and why they can speak more freely. Lu congratulates her on a successful summoning. It's not that easy for most people, but since Aisha is super talented, she did it in one go. Lu addresses her as Master, delighted to finally be summoned and connected with the girl she's been protecting all these years. Apparently, Aisha is pretty famous among the spirits. Even the Spirit King knows about her. Lu accidentally lets it slip that she's the only one in the world who can see spirits without making a contract. Aisha knew she was special, but she didn't think she was totally unique. Maybe her power is much greater than she realized. Eager to test her talents, Aisha asks about the higher-level spirits. Apparently, summoning more powerful spirits all comes down to how much magic the summoner possesses. And while Aisha has a high ability to adapt and connect with spirits, she doesn't have much magical power at the moment. She's still just a kid after all. Lu gets excited when she notices cookies on the desk, so they sit down for a cup of tea while Aisha processes all of this. She asks Lu how to acquire more magical power, but it's not some skill with a special cheat code. She'll have to increase it little by little if she wants to get to the higher level spirits, and ultimately, the Spirit King of Light, Luminous. Luminous is also what the humans call the God of Light, associated with glory, victory, and good harvests. Turns out, they're the same guy. In this universe, the Spirit Kings were born after the Creator God made day and night. Their names changed over time, so these days they're not always recognized as their original identities. Some of the deities humans worship are actually gods, but some, like Luminous, are really spirits. Thanks to Lou's little history lesson, Aisha has figured out a way to help her mother. The next day, she heads over to visit the Empress and Emperor, excited to announce her plan for the upcoming festivities. Since the Spring Festival is all about honoring spirits and the god of light, she proposed her own plan for the celebrations. Every day she's been working hard, hoping to bring the spirits back to the center of the Elmer Empire, since they've been mostly forgotten in recent years. As soon as Aisha asks Lou about the Spirit King, she starts rambling about how cool and handsome he is. Sounds like someone has a little crush if you ask me. He has yellow eyes and silver hair and is supposed to be the most dazzling of all gods and spirit kings alike. It's not possible for a human to summon him because no human has ever had enough magic to bring him into the human realm. But theoretically, it is still possible, since fairies are forced to accept any contract that summons them. Aisha is already crazy talented for her age, so who knows? Maybe someday she might have enough power to summon Luminous. She suddenly gets curious about her brother, who has been sick for a couple of days after practicing his swordsmanship in the rain. The maid wasn't actually supposed to tell her. Isis ordered his condition to be kept a secret in case Aisha came to visit and got infected. Understandably, the princess is a little upset that he kept it from her, but she decides to obey his wishes and write a letter instead. Aisha doesn't know it, but he could really use a pick-me-up right now. He's being looked after by the crabbiest of all the knights in training, a red-headed boy named Balmor Bion. Bion is the son of a duke, which maybe explains why he's not afraid to be rude to the crown prince. If Isis is a golden retriever, Bion is like the reluctant wolf at his side, always criticizing his reckless choices. Like training in the rain, for example. A butler interrupts their bickering to announce that a maid has arrived from the princess's palace. Uh-oh, secret's out, buddy. A flustered Isis hurriedly gets out of bed to receive his sister's precious letter. As you probably guessed, he forgets all about his illness once he's opened it. Bion tells him not to be dramatic, but come on, this is Crown Prince Isis. He's literally the drama king. He sends the maid back and tells Bion to can it while he reads Aisha's warm wishes. She talks about how much she misses him and how she hopes he'll be healthy in time for the spring ceremony, promising to pray for him. What a sweetie. Obviously, if Aisha requests it, her brother will move heaven and earth to make it happen. Just like she suspected, he does know she's hiding something from her family, but he trusts that she has her own reasons. He just wants to support her no matter what. Bion watches in shock as the prince suddenly regains his energy to write a response for Aisha. Although he thinks Isis is a little overeager at times, he is happy that the princess is becoming such a positive influence in his life. After Thetis passed away, there was a time when Isis went a little crazy and didn't have any direction in his life. Now, with Empress Iris and Aisha, he seems more driven than ever before. I mean, he literally swore his life to her. You can't get more dedicated than that. The first day of spring arrives at last, and with it comes the first day of the Spring Festival. There's an initial ceremony for Luminous, the god of light, after which the priests channel his holy powers to heal the sick and wounded. While watching the ceremony, Lou explains that the priests aren't channeling a divine energy from God like the humans believe. It's more like a special power owned by the light spirits which can heal sickness and injuries. The priests of Luminous are given access to a small amount of his power as thanks for their dedication. Aisha can use it too, but lucky for her, she doesn't have to dedicate her whole life to the church to access it. The higher the spirit summoned, the more power she can use. But even a low-level spirit like Lou can provide enough for her to heal people just like those priests. Well, that's exciting! But Aisha is smart enough to know that she should hide this skill for now. If word gets out that Elmer's princess is a spirit controller who can heal the wounded, then she might become a target. After the ceremony, the imperial family hosts a garden party with Elmer's greatest nobles. It's a great chance for Aisha to make friends, but all she wants to do is talk with Isis. She hasn't seen him since he recovered, and ever since then, he's been tailed by that red-haired boy, Duke Bion's son. He already has a reputation for being talented in both swords and magic. Just when Aisha's head is starting to pound from all the boring, girly conversation, Bion approaches her table. Apparently, Isis is looking for her, the perfect excuse to break away from this dull tea party. Once they're alone, Bion confesses that Isis didn't actually summon her. He just wanted the chance to talk to her alone. Even from a distance, he could see that she wasn't having a good time, so he decided to come and rescue her. Ooh, he's observant and kind. I always love a kind-hearted king with a cold exterior. Aisha thanks him and notices the floral brooch on his jacket. It was her idea. Everyone in the festival is wearing flowers as a token of thanks to the spirits for their protection. Beon compliments her planning. He's noticed that every event today is clearly geared around reminding people of the spirit's existence, since they're normally easy to forget. He sure catches on quick. He also compliments her maturity. He's been meaning to talk to her for a while, but the princess is kind of hard to approach for one very obvious reason. That reason barges in a moment later, completely ignoring Beon as he gushes over her letter and how much he missed her. He only stops rambling when they notice their grandparents' arrival from across the garden. Beon quietly tags along behind the kids as they guide the Marquise and Marquess through the palace grounds. The Marquise stops them by a flower arch and asks his granddaughter to stand beneath it. Aisha gets so caught up in the beauty of the roses that she doesn't notice him pulling out a glowing orb. It's kind of like a magical camera used to record pictures, images, and sounds. Just now, he took a photo of her, capturing every frame in the magic ball. Aisha's face goes bright red when she sees herself twirling and smiling at the petals. Isis immediately asks if he can keep it. His grandfather says no, pointing out that he can see his sister every day if he wants to. And besides, he bought this one as a present for Aisha. Beon watches them fondly. He doesn't have any siblings, so he doesn't know what it's like to bicker over something, or miss someone the way Isis does. It makes him kind of jealous. The next day is the biggest event of the entire festival, the burning of incense to pray for peace in the Empire. Everyone wears white, and Isis will lead the prayer as successor to the Elmer throne. In the evening, they'll have the largest banquet of the entire year, so there's a lot going on. Before all the madness starts, Aisha, Isis, and Beon get a chance to sit down for tea in the garden. Everything is perfectly presented, but Aisha doesn't recognize the person serving them. Which is weird, because usually serving tea is an honor reserved only for those who have worked in the palace for a really long time. The color of the tea is also a little strange. Uh-oh, I think we all know what's happening here. Aisha doesn't think anything of it and takes a sip. Lou appears to warn her, but it's already too late. She starts to spit blood, her vision blurring. But she's not worried for herself. Instead, she looks to Isis, praying he hasn't drank too much. A sudden splatter of blood confirms her suspicions. Both prince and princess collapse at the table, still reaching for each other. Oh my gosh, this is crazy! 5 minutes ago everything was fine and now… They can't be dead. There's no way they'd kill off the protagonist and her loyal puppy. Right? After the incident, the nobles are in a frenzy. Thanks to Beon, they quickly caught the servant responsible, but the poor kid is furious at himself for not being able to save them. He needs to give himself a break. He's a soldier, not a doctor. Luckily, Empress Iris was nearby, so she rushed to their side in time to call for help. After a full medical assessment, the doctor confirms that Aisha only ingested a small amount of poison. It had a serious impact since she's so young, but she should recover just fine. Isis, on the other hand, there's no guarantee that he'll survive. The most important thing right now is to discover the type of toxin so that they can find the antidote. Technically, their best bet would be using the divine power of the High Priest, but he's been summoned elsewhere for the rest of the festival. The Emperor is in shambles. Not only is he stressed about his son's survival, but now he has to deal with all these rumors springing up about the poisoning being a bad omen. Some people are even saying it's a sign that his heir isn't worthy. What a load of nonsense! The Empress is with the princess right now. The worst of it has passed, but they still need a high priest or someone similar to get rid of the toxins in her body. Which is kind of ironic. The one person capable of healing her and Isis is Aisha herself. And speaking of our main girl, she's currently having traumatic flashbacks to her time as Alyssa, when she was trapped in a dark cell with no way out. Aisha, back in her old body, immediately starts to panic. Her throat starts to burn, and the only water nearby is filthy and out of her reach. She tries to grab it anyway, and ends up spilling the entire bowl when it knocks against the bars. That feeling of emptiness and desperation takes her right back to her life as Alyssa, and the injustice she felt when her whole family turned against her. It's not the kind of thing you can just forget, even after being reborn. She curls up in a ball, wishing to die. And just then, a strange voice in her head answers back. The voice says she doesn't mean it, that she still has goals to accomplish before she gives up. Aisha is a little creeped out, but I guess having voices in her head isn't any weirder than going back in time. The voice reminds her not to focus on the family who abandoned her. There's a whole other family who love her and are waiting for her on the other side. A blinding light fills the cell, and at first, Aisha can't see a thing. Then the image sharpens. Fireworks burst over the heads of her family, calling her name and beckoning her back to the real world. That's all she needed to remember the truth. She's Aisha, not Alyssa. That life is over. She has a new purpose now, new people to live for. Unfortunately, this isn't one of those dream sequences where she can just click her fingers and wake up. Aisha starts running across an empty field, but the light just gets further and further away with every step. Frustrated, she lies down, trying to think up another strategy. What is that light anyway? It feels warm and welcoming, the way her family feels. Suddenly, Aisha sits up. She realizes that the light is not just other people, it's also inside of her. She doesn't need to chase it, she already has it. Confident once more, Aisha stands up and walks toward the light, calling out the name of her fairy spirit. As she gets closer, a darkness approaches her from behind, but Aisha isn't scared. She just steps into the light, knowing it will take her back home to the place where she belongs. Damn, I know she's lived twice already, but she sure is smart for a 7-year-old. Having successfully returned to her body, Aisha opens her eyes to find a teary Empress Iris by her bedside. She cries out and pulls her daughter into a tight hug as Aisha assures her she's perfectly fine. Excuse me? Girl, you nearly died. The priest confirms it too when checking up on her. Although she's regained her energy, she still needs a lot more rest and treatment to recover from the poisoning. Aisha asks at once about her brother. Seeing her mother's worried face, she knows immediately that something's not right. The priest reluctantly explains that Isis is in a critical condition since he consumed so much poison. They've already contacted the high priest, but since he's away on a pilgrimage, he won't arrive until tomorrow afternoon at the earliest. Aisha tries to get out of bed, gritting her teeth from the pain. Her mother and the priest try to make her rest, but she won't hear a word of it. Not while Isis is in danger. She snatches some medicine from the priest's hands and drinks it all in one go, demanding to visit her brother. Bion and the Emperor are watching over Isis when the princess arrives in her mother's arms. The Emperor looks very concerned to see her out of bed, but she doesn't bother speaking to him. She rushes straight to Isis, who is lying in bed, clearly fighting a fever. A priest is doing his best to keep the toxins at bay, but it's obvious Isis is struggling. I have no idea how a 7-year-old, even a crazy talented one with magic and fairies on her side, is going to save a dying boy. But Aisha is determined to do it. Isis always protects her, so now it's her turn. A teary Lou appears, grateful to see Aisha up and about. Her owner doesn't waste time with pleasantries and immediately asks if she can call an intermediate spirit to help her brother. At first, Lou refuses. Aisha only just recovered, so she doesn't have much energy to spend. Trying to summon a higher-level spirit right now could be really dangerous. Then, she suddenly remembers about magic stones, which can basically lend her more energy to carry out the summoning. With a magic stone, they might just be able to do it. With Lou's blessing, Aisha pulls out the stone Arasan gave her at the birthday banquet. She's been keeping it safe just in case she needed it for something like this, but unfortunately, the stone is empty of energy. Lou thinks that might be why she was able to regain her consciousness so quickly, because the magic in this stone was protecting her mana. Now it's run out, which leaves Aisha out of options. But if Aisha can do one thing, it's improvise. She suddenly asks Bion if she can borrow his magic stone, and he agrees. Her family watch in confusion as their 7-year-old suddenly gets on the ground and starts scribbling a rune from her ancient textbook. They've never seen her use magic before, especially not to summon a spirit. They must think she's lost her marbles. The rune she draws this time is huge, far bigger than the one that summoned Lou. She steps back, places Bion's magic stone in the center, and begins the incantation. Her parents are shocked and kinda terrified when the rune lights up bright red and starts sapping energy from their daughter. This time, the summoning requires a lot more from little Aisha, who can barely hold her head up from the effort. But once it's complete, a large, life-size fairy appears in the center and introduces themselves as Remy. Aisha extends a hand, asking to sign a contract. The spirit accepts, not like they have a choice, and kisses her hand to seal the deal. The red haze disappears after that. Just like Lou, Remy now has a physical form, though she seems a little more serious than her first fairy friend. At this point, the Emperor and Empress are practically begging for an explanation, like, what just happened? When did their daughter get these powers? And why is there a fairy in their son's bedroom? Speaking of Isis, the poor kid's life is still very much in danger. Aisha explains briefly that she has summoned a spirit with healing powers to save her brother and approaches his bedside. Remy explains that she and Aisha are already connected since they've signed the contract. The closer the two of them are, the more of Remy's power Aisha can use, so it only makes sense for her to just slip inside her body. Well, kind of. Remy shares her energy and knowledge with her owner, turning the princess's eyes golden. Suddenly, she feels strong again and knows what to do instinctively, so she places her hands over Isis and starts to heal him. It takes a lot of energy, but it seems to be working. Within only a few seconds, Isis stirs, but it's not enough. Even with Remy's added powers, she can't wake him up and break the fever. Thinking of their childhood and all the time they spent together, Aisha summons all of her energy, every last drop, and tries to keep her hands steady. After a few seconds, she collapses. Fortunately, Bian is there to catch her, but the writing's on the wall. She doesn't have enough energy or power to completely heal her brother. At least, not without wrecking herself in the process. Exhausted and defeated, Aisha cries out her frustration. She doesn't know it, but the truth is she's already done enough. Isis has woken up, thinking he's in heaven. His weepy sister throws herself at him, too relieved to even speak. I can't believe it. She actually saved him. I don't know about you guys, but for a second there, I really thought we were about to lose him. I'm sure you guys already know what happens next. Everybody cries and hugs each other. Isis slowly regains his strength, and Aisha finally reveals the truth about her ability to summon spirits. The useless priest, who's still hanging around by the way, apologizes for not being able to save Isis on his own. He's so impressed by Aisha that he even calls her a saint, which, I mean, let's be honest, it's not off the table. Aisha, of course, denies it. She's just a spirit mage. A very talented one, but a mage nonetheless. To prove it, she summons Lou to appear in front of them and introduces herself. Her father boasts about how proud he is and promises to support her future path as a mage. Well, I guess that solved the question of her career. The priest is still in shock, so Aisha explains the truth about Luminous, a god who is also the king of the light spirits. That's where the priest gets their power from, which is why it seemed like Aisha's powers are so holy. It's kind of a risk to be explaining all of this, since revealing that a god is actually just a spirit probably won't go down well with the church. But this priest seems pretty chill. He's mainly just impressed that a little girl could summon more power than the high priest. He names her a goddess, which Aisha kind of just ignores. They can call her whatever they want, but Aisha makes it clear that she has no intention of joining their religion. Her place is with her family in the Imperial Palace. After that's settled, Bian excuses himself, promising to keep what happened here a secret for now. The Emperor and Isis have a spine-chilling conversation about how they're going to punish the attempted murderers, all while smiling like psychopaths. I guess there's a reason the Emperor has been such a good ruler all this time. Over the next few weeks, everyone in the palace makes a big fuss about Aisha. The Empress will only allow her to eat in bed, which means Aisha's maid is basically hand-feeding her every spoonful. She's also being forced to take some horrible, bitter medicine that the High Priest brought after returning from his travels. The culprit of the poisoning was discovered to be a famous count from the north, who didn't support Isis as a successor. The Emperor was merciless in his revenge, but Aisha still isn't sure they've uncovered the whole story. After all, why would the Count target Aisha as well? It seems more like they are trying to cripple the Elmer royalty. Plus the fact that they used exactly the same poison that Marianne ingested? Well, it's all a bit suspicious if you ask me. A little while later, Aisha is finally allowed outside her bedroom to enjoy the refreshing summer weather. While taking a stroll in the gardens, she meets Isis, who confirms her suspicions. The Count is not their real enemy, and while Isis wants her to know the whole truth, their father is strictly against it. Isis also says that she has the right not to listen. She's still just a kid, and he's determined to become stronger so that if she wants to live in ignorance, he can continue protecting her. But let's be honest, we all know Aisha isn't that kind of girl. The princess reminds him that she saved him last time. She's more than capable of handling herself. So it's only fair they treat her like an adult and tell her the whole story. Isis knew she'd say that. He tells her the Count never let anything slip, despite painful interrogation. But the successor excuse wasn't enough to fool the Emperor. After further investigation, they discovered that the true culprits were the imperial family of the Edenbell Empire. I can't say I'm surprised. As far as they know, the Edenbell Empire family are a big ol' mess. Lachius, the crown prince currently on the throne, is known to have many faults. The eldest princess, Alyssa, has been deposed for trying and failing to assassinate another member of the imperial family, which is such a shock that Aisha almost collapses. She looks very pale, but she insists that Isis tell her the rest. They don't know the whole story yet, but they suspect that the crown prince instigated their poisoning in an attempt to draw attention away from his own family and weaken their main rivals, the Elmer Empire. After hearing all of that, Aisha feels sick. Finding out that the family who killed her in her past life are after her again? Well, you can understand why she's so upset. Worried about her condition, Isis tries to send his sister back to the palace to rest. But she has something important to tell him first. When she looks up, Aisha is crying. She confesses that she was born with memories of another life, before her time as a princess of Elmer. She tells him everything: her old identity, the false accusation, and even her eventual execution. Most importantly, she swears that she had nothing to do with the poisoning. She must be scared that Isis won't believe her. Although, I don't know why she's worried. She could tell him she's secretly a flying pig, and I'm pretty sure that boy would believe her. Of course, Isis doesn't even hesitate. Even though it's a crazy story, he immediately says he believes her. I'm not sure if he's super loyal or just super stupid, but he seems to have no trouble with the whole reincarnation thing either. But at the very least, he knows her well enough to know Aisha could never kill someone. Not in this life or the past either. Even if the whole world turned against her, Isis promises to always stand by her side. Oh, you guys, isn't he just perfect? After that, Aisha sobs her little heart out in his arms. The tears just won't stop, even after she's feeling better and Isis has promised 1,000 times to treat her enemies as his own. And you just know he's serious. This boy would do unspeakable things to anyone who tried to harm his baby sister. So he asks her what she wants to do. Does she want to go after the Edenbells? Does she want to forget about it and move on? Obviously not. She wants revenge. That's why she was reborn after all. And more than anything, she wants to clear her name. Alyssa's name, that is. Isis promises to help her, and after that, she lays on his lap, looking up at the clouds. After all these years, she's finally come clean about both her powers and her past life. It feels good, to be honest, and to have her favorite person accept her despite everything. Aisha admits that she's really scared all this love and happiness will suddenly disappear. But with Isis watching over her, she can rest a little easier. She falls asleep on his lap, where even in her dreams, he keeps her safe. Meanwhile, over in the Edenbell Empire, Crown Prince Lachius is feeling bitter that his assassination attempt failed. Not only did he fail, but now they've also lost their inside man, the Count who took the blame. He knows that if the truth comes out, it won't be possible to prevent an all-out war, which would be fine by him if he only had time to weaken the Elmer Empire first, strengthen his own forces, and quickly gain the title of Emperor. That's what he was trying to do by poisoning Isis and Aisha, but obviously, that didn't work. So now he needs to prepare in case this whole situation escalates to a conflict. The prince is pulled from his thoughts when he spots his sister, Marianne, looking just as gorgeous and innocent as ever. Isn't it freaky how different people can be on the inside? She's even sitting by herself, quietly praying like a little angel. Ugh, this girl gives me the creeps. Lachius knew she'd be here. Apparently, she comes to the Temple of Selena fairly often, and he wanted to speak to her. As he sits down, he gets a sudden flashback of his younger years, when the siblings all went for a picnic together, Alyssa included. Just seeing her face makes his head hurt. Yeah, it should. That's called guilt pain, buddy. He breaks the news that the poisoning failed, which seems to disappoint the so-called Saint Marianne. He assumes the Elmer family just have a really good priest. He has no idea that his dead sister was reincarnated as the princess and managed to save his rival's life. While thinking about Alyssa, he remembers the political scramble during her accusation, how different people tried to avoid the blame by supporting her execution. Her mother did so, and Lachius was the same. As her half-brother and heir to the throne, lots of people pointed the finger at him as well. Some people are still trying to keep those rumors alive just to ruin his reputation and his chances at becoming emperor. That's why he's so desperate to prove himself by taking out the Elmer family and conquering their empire in war if he has to. Even now, it seems little Alyssa is causing problems for her ex-family. Despite the trouble, Lachius has been having strangely fond flashbacks to his time with her in the past few months. Her hands were always warm, while Marianne's hand is ice cold when he grabs it. Hello? How many signs is this guy going to ignore? Back in the Elmer Empire, there's another crown prince being haunted by his past. Isis often thinks of his sickly mother, who passed away when he was very little. Even though her death wasn't his fault, he always felt that way, since her condition worsened after giving birth to him. For a while, after his mother's death, he became very cynical. There were a lot of people hoping to depose him, just like Lachius. And he was also suspicious of the emperor until his father declared publicly that he was the one and only heir to the throne. After that, his position stabilized, but he still didn't let his guard down. He was worried the next empress would give birth to a prince, and then everything would become complicated. For that reason, he avoided Empress Iris when she first joined the palace. Despite the distance, she always made an effort to treat him kindly, to be honest and welcoming to her new son. He tried to ignore her. Even though he was just a boy, he was wary of letting anyone too close and becoming attached to someone who might stab him in the back. What a hard life it must be as a crown prince. Things finally changed after Isis overheard the empress and his father discussing their next child with the palace staff. His worst fear was coming true. If the empress had a baby boy, his position would be in jeopardy. A moody little Isis stomped off, deciding not to take walks through the palace again in future. The empress knew he'd been listening, so she ran to catch up to him in the garden. At first, Isis was flustered and tried to run off. He was so determined to get away that he didn't look where he was going and tripped over a rock. He rolled down a slope and got pretty roughed up in the process. Deeply concerned, the empress came running after him. "Oh gosh, don't make the same mistake, Your Majesty." Luckily, she made it to her stepson unharmed and checked his injuries right away. She's such a kind-hearted woman that she even started tearing up. Isis assured her he was fine. Actually, he was kind of rude and told her to stop making him uncomfortable. Ouch! She was only trying to help. Like all little boys do, he expected to be yelled at. Before the empress had a chance, he got to his feet and turned to leave. But the empress kept calling after him, and when he wouldn't turn back, she just scooped him up and carried him instead. Oh, right. I forgot he was so tiny. Still concerned about his bumps and bruises, Iris set him down nearby and tore a piece of her dress to make him a bandage. She scolded him for acting so callous. Not towards her, but towards himself. The empress said she cherished him, and it made her angry to have him brush her aside while he was hurting. She softened and asked if it was because she's not his biological mother. Of course, Isis didn't answer that. It's kind of a heavy question to dump on a kid, after all. A long time passed, and the prince went about his life as if nothing ever happened. His father agreed on a date for his coronation, which would secure his position and officially make him the crown prince, and yet he still felt so frustrated with his life. He thought back to the empress, how she escorted him back to the palace and asked him to never ignore his wounds, and to always put himself first. And who came to interrupt his thoughts? The empress herself. By this point, she was pretty heavily pregnant and hadn't seen him in some time. She congratulated him on his enthronement and invited him to her quarters to have some tea. Even for Isis, it would be too rude to say no, so he followed her to the empress's palace, where she asked him for a favor. His grandfather's words kept ringing in his ear, reminding him not to trust her. Now that he'd become the crown prince, was she trying to use him? But Iris didn't ask him for any kind of political advantage. She just wanted him to be a good brother to his sister once she was born. Isis was shocked. He didn't expect her to consider him the brother of her unborn child. This is the first time anyone had ever asked him to be something other than a prince. People were always demanding he took a stand, did his duty, or allied with the right people. Now, for once, there was this kind lady just asking him to be an older brother. Still, he was such a stubborn kid that he couldn't just say yes. He promised to think it over, which is kind of funny. What's he gonna do, say no? Over the next few weeks, Prince Isis visited the Empress's palace more frequently and became very fond of his stepmother. It made him happy to be somewhere so warm and friendly, especially knowing he had a baby sister on the way. A short while later, the Emperor officially announced his son's coronation. A feast was held for 1 whole month in his honor. Of course, his grandfather also made an appearance and congratulated him on finally achieving security in the royal family. But Isis admitted the truth, that he never wanted to be crown prince. It was only because his grandfather was the one who forced him into the role, and he hated it. He had no idea how his grandfather would react, but the one thing he wasn't expecting was an apology. He knelt down and admitted that he became desperate after Isis's mother passed away. He was trying so hard to protect the last remaining piece of her. And to be fair, if the Emperor wasn't so kind, he really could have been in danger. It didn't help that Isis had his mother's eyes, which only made his grandfather more protective, more desperate to secure his spot between the Emperor and Empress. Hearing all of this felt like a weight off Isis's chest. Hearing that his grandfather wasn't against the Empress removed the last obstacle between the prince and his stepmother. He had a sudden urge to visit her before the ceremony and ran off right away to find her. His father caught him right outside the door, pleased to see his son looking so cheerful for once. Out of nowhere, he started talking about his mother and how the Emperor was so busy since she passed away. Why did everyone want to have deep conversations that day? Give the poor kid a break. He apologized for not having enough time for his son and admitted that marrying Iris was partly for his sake. He was hoping she could help to raise him, and that way his son would have a mother again. I'm not sure a kid his age has the mental capacity to process all that. On to his third emotionally draining conversation of the day, Isis charged into the Empress's room, panting and exhausted. When Iris turned around, the little prince pulled out the handkerchief she gave him that day. She didn't take it right away and started telling him about a dream she just had. Meanwhile, poor Isis was just standing there, probably already late for his coronation ceremony, wondering what the heck she's talking about. Which is kind of freaky because the Emperor decided to name their baby Aisha, which means white bird. Quite the creative, isn't he? She once again asked him to be a good brother to little Aisha, and turned back to find the prince crying. Finally, he felt like he was part of a family again, and even called the Empress mother. Then obviously that sets her off, and then they're both crying and promising to be good mothers and brothers. Come on, you guys, there's a ceremony to perform. It's a good thing Iris and Isis did make peace in the end, because Aisha couldn't have imagined her life without her brother, especially since he's so dedicated to her. Finally, we're back to the present, where Aisha is being woken by her nanny on the morning of her 14th birthday. That's right, our little Aisha is now a teenager, which probably means Marianne is an adult with even more power and influence over the Edenbell Empire than she had before. Something tells me she'll be forcing her way back into Aisha's life very soon. For the same reason, Aisha is very excited about growing up. Just like in our world, 18 years old is considered the start of adulthood in the Empire. The start of adulthood as a princess will give her a lot more control, and she's only got 4 years left. Already, she is adored by the whole Empire and many other nations as well. As proof, she received an absolute mountain of gifts from the representatives of different countries to wish her a happy birthday. Her parents are already so proud of her, especially her mother. The Empress used to worry a lot about Aisha's position as a child. After saving her brother and revealing her powers, she was given the title of Saintess, and people quickly became obsessed with her. I mean, she was literally a child of God and a princess. She was basically a celebrity at the age of 7. Her father interrupts her flashback by presenting Aisha his gift. It looks like a map? At first, she's a little confused, and then it hits her. Her father points to a small island. Yep, that's right. He literally bought his daughter an island. Ugh, why am I not a princess? This island is in the Principality of Realton and contains an actual diamond mine. They only managed to get a hold of it because of Isis, who, by the way, has grown into a very handsome young man. He looks a lot more like his father and even calls Iris mother now. As well as growing up, he's become a lot more serious and responsible, talented with both a pen and a sword, which obviously has made him very popular with the ladies. Though he's received dozens of marriage proposals, he's turned down every one. Is it bad if that makes me happy? Anyway, the Empress interrupts her son's bragging about getting the island to announce her own gift. She's gone almost as big as her husband and stepson by securing a villa in the south with beautiful scenery and gorgeous weather. Aisha has never been able to travel before, and now suddenly, she has both an island and a villa all to herself. She must be the luckiest girl in the world. Her parents even joke about giving her a whole country for her next birthday. I think that would be just a little bit over the top. That evening, a banquet is held to celebrate the princess's birthday. Aisha is nervous about meeting all the guests, so Lou reassures her. The amount of affection she receives gets greater every year, but so does the amount of pressure. The people of the Empire are watching her closely. As Saintess, she's been asked to heal the Empire's sick and wounded on every birthday. That was the condition for letting her leave the temple and resume her position as daughter of the Emperor. But Aisha never wanted all this attention or grand titles. She just wanted revenge, remember? Maybe if her family wasn't so wonderful, she wouldn't have felt the pressure to fulfill her duty as a princess. Life is always unexpected like that. Now she's more dedicated to her family and her empire than her original mission. All these things are running through her head when Master Beyond steps onto the balcony. Just like her brother, he's also grown into a very handsome young man. Though he's still just as stiff and formal as before. I guess that's only natural for the vice commander of the Imperial Guard. Aisha still has the red magic stone she borrowed from him to save her brother. She keeps it in a jewelry box next to the stone she received from Arsene when she was younger. Bion says everyone is looking for her. They need to start the ceremony, so she heads inside. Just as the princess reaches the door, Bion assures her that she can lean on him if she ever needs any help. After all, there are plenty of people looking out for her. I guess he heard her talking to Lou about feeling pressured. Aisha reassures him that she won't hesitate to ask for help and thanks him. Apparently, that's enough to make the vice commander of the Imperial Guard blush. He always was a sensitive one. Inside the throne room, Aisha is dressed up in priestly robes and given the responsibility of holding the sacred healing ceremony. She conjures Limi, shocking the audience who have never seen a spirit before. Aisha commands Limi to treat the patient kneeling before them, a blind woman. Her magical powers have grown a lot in the last few years, and now she's able to perform tremendous tasks without depleting her mana. In just a few seconds, the blind woman's sight is restored, and people begin to chant like crazy for the Saintess. Despite being more capable than she used to be, Aisha still feels the effects a few days later, exhausted from exercising so much of her powers. She was so tired that she didn't even get to attend her own birthday banquet, and has spent the last few days in bed. Bored, she asks her nanny to bring the maps detailing the locations of her island and villa. Seriously, that's still so crazy to me. What kind of 14-year-old has a house and an island already? Even Aisha is a little flustered by the scale of this year's gifts. It turns out Isis secured the island with the Diamond Mine in exchange for a military alliance with the Principality of Rioten. It was established about a century after gaining independence from the Elmer Empire, so their army is still pretty weak. And since the Edenbell Empire are sitting right on their northern border, they need all the help they can get. Since the poisoning attempt, they've had no further trouble from their eternal rivals, but Isis has worked his butt off to get strong enough to face them someday. Aisha, too, has managed to keep studying elemental arts outside of her duties. Thinking about her ex-family gets her all worked up, so the princess decides to visit her new villa to relax. Her family sees her off at the gate, waving goodbye as the princess rides off in her carriage. Already, Aisha and Lou are excited to be outside the palace. She spent most of her life between the Imperial grounds and the temple, so this is her first trip all by herself. Transportation has been greatly improved ever since the poisoning incident, when the priest couldn't make it back in time to save his son. Nowadays, they have magical portals, so Aisha is riding down a rural road to the south of the Empire within minutes. Already, the weather is warm and bright, which makes it easy to drift off to sleep. A few minutes later, she wakes up to find herself in front of her gorgeous estate. Did her mom call this a villa? That looks more like a mansion to me. It has balconies, fountains, and carefully curated gardens. It's literally every little girl's dream. The mansion, let's call it what it is surrounded by a small forest and was built to catch the eye. I mean, obviously, it's half gold. The garden is full of flowers, and every one of the staff is friendly, from the maids to the chefs. You might think a little girl would be scared walking into a house full of strangers, but Aisha already feels right at home. Plus, all the rooms are protected with magic, so she's perfectly safe. Her brother and mother picked the furniture and designed the villa themselves, so there's a piece of her family everywhere she looks. Aisha still can't quite believe it's all hers. An even bigger shock comes when the small mountain of invitations that have already arrived at the villa. All the families in the south want to get close with her, particularly one Marquise Blim, the head of one of the most powerful families in this region. He has a daughter about her age, a girl named Rose, who has yet to debut in society. Aisha is keen to have a friend her own age, so she accepts. Her mother tried to get her to socialize with girls her own age back at the palace, but between her imperial duties and her temple visits, she spent more time with her family than friends. And she had Lou, of course. Later that evening, Aisha wakes up in a strange place, in a forest on the edge of the cliff. And there's someone waiting for her. As she watches, a great golden bird comes down and greets the stranger. Do you guys recognize him? That's right, it's that weirdo who appeared in her room all those years ago. The one who said he came too early and then vanished, erasing her memory? Aisha wakes up in a panic, back in her own bed, with Lou right behind her. It was all a dream. Or was it? She tries to shake the dream from her head and get back to enjoying her holiday. The next morning, they take a carriage to tour the area around Antrel and enjoy the mountain scenery. As if that wasn't enough, she's attending a ball in the afternoon. This girl is only 14, and already she does more in one day than I do in a whole week. Her governess announces that the area they're going to is on a steep cliff and is known to be dangerous. Aisha suddenly remembers the dream, wondering if it's the same place. But they stop off at the bottom, not on the cliff itself, so she can't really tell. It's very difficult to reach the top, so there are all sorts of myths about strange creatures and mysterious occurrences existing up there. The locals avoid visiting to respect whatever lives up there. I wonder if they'd still avoid it if they knew the strange creature was just a gorgeous blonde man with a pet bird. Obviously, when you tell a kid that something is off limits, it just makes them want to do it even more. She decides to revisit the cliff with Lou, or at least attempt to find the strange man. They take the carriage back to the villa, where the princess gets dressed for the Blim family ball and heads straight back out again. She's a little nervous, since she's not used to talking with kids her own age. But the governess reassures her that she'll do just fine. I mean, who could dislike someone as gorgeous, rich, and talented as her? Just when she's starting to relax, Lou gets agitated and warns her that something bad is going to happen. Thanks, Lou. That's somehow vague, unhelpful, and terrifying all at the same time. She steps out of the carriage and is greeted by a servant who warns her that a white-haired spirit has just arrived in the ballroom. No way! Does that mean Marianne is here? What would she be doing in some random countryside ball? And in the Elmer territory, no less. Aisha is scared, but she has to see for herself. Plus, if Marianne really was able to conjure spirits, that would explain why her eyes lit up red. Just as she's running toward the mansion, Rose Blim comes out to greet her, apologizing for being late. Rose is slightly starstruck to actually meet the Princess of the Empire and awkwardly introduces herself, and Lady Duke Chloe Demont, a blue-haired girl beside her. Aisha wastes no time and asks them straight up if the news about the spirit is true. The girls are a little hesitant to explain. The situation is complicated. All she can tell right now is that there is in fact a spirit inside. Aisha decides to go and confirm it with her own eyes, since no one seems to be able to give her a straight answer. While they walk through the ballroom, she considers several different possibilities. Perhaps Marianne arrived pretending to be her. After all, the princess of the Edenbell Empire would have no business at a party like this, and they probably wouldn't have let her in unless they thought she was Aisha. They overhear some girls nearby talking about the fake princess, claiming she summoned a spirit with blue light on her hands. There's no one else known to have those kind of powers, not in the Elmer Empire. Could it really be Marianne? Aisha doesn't want to ruin Rose Blim's reputation by outing herself as the real white-haired spirit of Elmer, so she keeps quiet and decides to follow the crowds. She asks Rose and Lady Demont to call her Aina for the time being, and asks the maid at the door not to announce her when they enter. The door opens to the sound of cheering crowds, revealing a young girl with white hair and bright blue eyes, almost exactly like Aisha. Wait, what the heck is going on here? I really thought Marianne had snuck her way in. Does this mean there are two spirit summoners in the Empire? Aisha is totally stunned. Fortunately, the girl isn't pretending to be her. She's actually the second daughter of Marquise Roland, Ashley Roland. You see, after the princess was discovered to be a spirit, the nobles became envious and wanted to see if their children had any potential. One day, a sorcerer was invited to teach Ashley and Chloe Demont and Rose Blim. The sorcerer said that Ashley could have the power to summon spirits, but they never saw her actually do it until today. While the other guests are awed by her powers, Aisha is just relieved she isn't Marianne. I mean, if you think about it, there's no way Marianne would show up somewhere so public in her enemy's empire. Plus, I'm pretty sure Marianne isn't a water spirit like Ashley. The real question now is why she pretended to be a princess. Aisha asks her friends if she'd been acting strange at all lately, but they report that Ashley was the same as always when they last met her 2 days ago. It's clear that the three girls are very close, but Aisha senses something strange about her, and Lou literally said something was up as soon as they arrived. She summons her little fairy friend and asks her to take a closer look from above the crowd. It takes Lou literally seconds to realize Ashley is wearing an artifact, an item that can temporarily increase magical powers. That would explain why Aisha couldn't sense any power coming from her either. Magical artifacts are actually prohibited in the Elmer Empire. Since they can't react to the user's negative feelings and emotions, things can quickly go wrong. Plus, it's easy for other sorcerers to interact with the artifact and cause serious harm to the person using it. Long story short, it should not be in the hands of a child. Aisha thanks Lou for her service and sends her back to the spirit realm. But when she looks up, it's not Ashley she sees, but the man from her dream. Oh wait, I thought he was a spirit. What the heck is he doing at a random human ball? She's too preoccupied with Ashley to investigate his appearance. After overhearing her say that she's going to take a rest with her spirit, Aisha decides to follow. The artifact has started emitting a strange black light, a little reminiscent of the smoke that came out of that necklace Escardo wore back at the banquet. I don't know about you guys, but I'm almost certain it's black magic. With all the guests in the crowd, Aisha loses Ashley and ends up wandering through the corridors with the other girls in tow. Rose is stopped by her parents, who seem quite concerned about the way the ball is going. They're even more surprised once they meet Princess Aisha, but she doesn't have time to exchange pleasantries. She thanks them for the invite and quickly asks where the nearest guest room is. If Ashley has run out of mana, then the first place she'll go is somewhere private to recover, right? Little does she realize that Ashley actually noticed the princess back when she was doing her demonstration. Now she's totally freaking out, worried that the princess is going to punish her. Her water spirit, Nias, is also worried and begs her to take off the artifact, warning her of the danger. But Ashley wants to stay with her new spirit friend a little longer. Without the artifact, she wouldn't have enough power to summon her, so this is the only way they can stay together. It seems like wearing the artifact and gaining so much power in such a short amount of time made her confused. She didn't actually mean to impersonate Princess Aisha. People just misunderstood, and then she didn't really correct them. It felt good to be praised for the first time, since she's usually scolded by her mother. When this strange sorcerer appeared and encouraged her to become an elementalist, she was excited by the idea of becoming powerful. But she didn't want to wear the artifact. They just gave it to her and rushed off before she could say no. While she was looking at it, her mother came in and asked how her classes went with the sorcerer. Ashley told her she'd been complimented, but her mother didn't seem to care since she hadn't even summoned a spirit. What kind of mother is she? And why does she expect her daughter to have summoned a spirit on her first try? That would be impossible for anyone other than Aisha. Her horrible mother ordered her to keep studying and to prepare to meet the princess at the Bloom family ball. After that, Ashley was so desperate to prove herself that she gave in, wore the artifact, and well, the rest is history. Now she's hiding in the gardens, trying to avoid running into anyone while Aisha and the others search for her. Suddenly, Chloe has an idea of where she might be hiding. Aisha asks her to lead the way, but just as they're heading out, she catches sight of the blonde man again. Why is he always hanging around like that? Doesn't he have somewhere to be? Fortunately, he actually proves to be helpful, or kind of. He asks if they're looking for a white-haired girl and warns them that she's in a dangerous state since she used all her energy to summon a spirit. At this point, Aisha suddenly gets suspicious. If this guy knows he's in danger and clearly saw what happened, why didn't he do something? Aisha asks if he was the one who gave her the artifact, at which point Rose starts panicking. I guess the normal people still hadn't realized what's going on. Aisha asks him straight up who he is. He seemed very calm back in the ballroom, and he's obviously familiar with the world of spirits, so why didn't he stop her? The blonde man is super cold and says there's no reason he should have stepped in, saying it was all her choice. Excuse me? That girl is just a teenager. She doesn't know what she's doing. Aisha and the strange man are about to literally throw hands when suddenly they sense a strong pulse of energy from outside. Earlier, Ashley's mother found her in the garden. She showed her Nias, hoping her mother would be proud of her, but all she gave her was a slap. Seriously, what is this lady's problem? She's mad about the fact that her daughter impersonated the princess, but that wasn't her fault. She didn't give her one single compliment about summoning a spirit and just went straight back to the ball. Ashley was too exhausted to go back to the ball, so she tried to head somewhere quiet to rest. Instead, she ran into a group of sorcerers, including the one who gave her the artifact in the first place. This isn't gonna be good. The sorcerer compliments her abilities and asks if she enjoyed being mistaken for a princess. Poor Ashley feels awful. She knows she could have corrected the guests, but she just didn't want that praise and affection to disappear. She promises to go back to the ball and tell everyone the truth, that she's not a real spirit summoner and not the real princess. That's when the sorcerers get hella creepy. You see, this is why you should never mess with people wearing hoods. Instead of revealing the truth, they want her to keep up the pretense, to turn the lie into reality. Ashley tries to refuse, but the sorcerer only gets angrier. She seems to have lost faith in Ashley and offers to take back the artifact if that's really what she wants. But the poor girl really doesn't want to lose Nias. It's easy to forget, but when one summons a spirit, both parties make a contract and develop a strong bond very quickly. There's literally an invisible tether between them. The sorcerer laughs at poor Ashley for being scared to lose her new friend. Then she threatens her, warning the girl that being too greedy could get her hurt. She summons some kind of purple fireball and sends it shooting right towards her. Ashley braces for the worst, but at the last second, our hero shows up. No, not that useless blonde guy. It's Aisha, using her power to summon Limi to protect them. As if it's no big deal, she smiles over her shoulder at Ashley and introduces herself. Yeah, no big deal. Just the princess of the Elmar Empire coming to save your butt. Of course, Limi is powerful, but against 3 sorcerers all attacking at once, she starts to struggle. The sorcerers try to switch tactics and strike the other girls, who have arrived a few meters away with the blonde guy. Finally, the stranger proves his worth by protecting them against an attack. After that, the dark mages seem to realize they're outnumbered and disappear into the night. That was intense! The girls come running toward their bestie, asking if she's okay and yelling at her for being so reckless. Getting involved with sorcerers, accepting an artifact, even pretending to be the princess? She's had a pretty crazy couple of days. Chloe tries to stop Rose from popping off, but she's just worried about her friend. All of a sudden, Ashley snaps. They don't know anything about spirits, so why are they telling her off? She's only doing all of this to be loved and accepted by her mother. Chloe and Rose don't even need to try to be loved by their families. That really strikes a chord with Aisha, who remembers what it was like to be Alyssa, desperate for her mother's love. She tries to approach Ashley and gently asks her to take the artifact off, but she starts yelling again, refusing to lose the power she worked so hard to gain. She takes off, sprinting into the forest while the girls go running after her. Aisha's about to join them when the blonde guy stops her and says he has a question. Can't he see they're in the middle of something? As if that wasn't bad enough already, the question he wants to ask is why she's so involved with other people's lives. He must be some kind of sociopath. Apparently, he cannot understand why she's trying to help Ashley when she made all these decisions herself and even yelled at the princess. I guess he's the kind of person who only does things when there's something in it for him. If I was her, I would probably have kicked him by now. He is the only adult in this situation, plus he has magical powers, and yet all he's done is defend them from one little spell? Ugh, he's really getting on my nerves. Aisha calmly responds that she doesn't need a reason to help someone. If she's able to do something, then she will. Always. She points out that he also helped Rose and Chloe by defending them from the blast, even though it didn't benefit him. He didn't do that for his own sake, but just because he could. Yeah, I don't know, girl. I kinda think he was just defending himself. She tries to go after the others, but the stupid man calls her back again. To her shock, a golden bird appears above them, radiating light and energy. Finally, Mr. Useless has decided to help out and allows Aisha to borrow this bird so that she can take flight and search for the others from above. Okay, I take back what I said. Maybe he isn't completely useless. Aisha recognizes the bird as a great spirit named Ludion. He's incredibly powerful and also pretty huge, so the princess can climb on no problem. They take off, soaring through the sky over the Blim family mansion. She still feels a little emotional after hearing Ashley's outburst, and then her conversation with the blonde spirit summoner. Actually, part of the reason why she always wants to help is because back in her past life, no one ever reached out or tried to help her. But with the support of her new family, she's been able to achieve so much. That's why she wants to do the same for others. That's what makes her a real princess. She has such a pure heart. Luckily, it doesn't take long for Aisha to spot a small crowd forming near the fountains. Poor Ashley thinks her life is over. I mean, she did just yell at the princess. If it was Marianne and not Aisha, she probably would have been killed already. She's on her knees, all scraped up and crying when the other girls start to gather behind her. Some of them still think she's a real princess and call for a doctor. The girl is about to turn around and own up to her lie when Aisha appears, right on time, descending from the skies like a literal angel. Which kind of comes in handy, since people are so impressed with Aisha's dramatic entrance that they forget all about the girl who tried to impersonate her. I mean, who wouldn't be excited about a giant golden bird? Aisha finally formally introduces herself to the guests, and suddenly the attention swings back to Ashley. The princess covers it all up, praising Ashley very publicly for practicing so hard in the forest. She tells her to take a break from summoning spirits and get some rest. Basically, she makes it look like Aisha loaned her some magic powers, since she heard Ashley was already very talented. It's pretty smart if you think about it. Now there won't be any questions about why she can't summon Nias again in future, and no one will find out about the artifact. The guests are kind of suspicious, but no one would dare question the Empire's one and only princess. She uses Lumi to heal Ashley's wounds and reassures her that parting ways with Nias. It's not like it's goodbye forever. Maybe if Ashley really works hard, she can bring her back with her own powers next time. It's a little emotional, but the girl agrees and finally takes off the artifact. In the same moment, the spirit disappears. At least she still has Rose and Chloe to take care of her. They seem like a pretty solid trio. Now that Aisha has saved the day as usual, she decides to head back to her villa/mansion. It's been a pretty long day, and they achieved a lot, but there are still several questions to answer. For one thing, they never found out who that guy was, and for another, the artifact is still emitting black light. She was expecting it to stop once Ashley took it off. While Aisha is staring at it, the blonde guy reappears out of nowhere and destroys the bracelet, suggesting it might be an accumulation of negative energy. As anyone would, Aisha leaps out of her chair, shocked to see him. This mansion is protected by magic, remember? Not just anyone can randomly appear on her balcony. When you add to the fact that he summoned a very high-class spirit like Ludion, well, it's kind of obvious, isn't it? This blonde sociopath is none other than the King of Light himself. Who knew Luminous was such a stone-cold meanie? I bet Aisha feels bad about yelling at him now. She changes her tone while Lou offers a formal greeting and then rushes to cuddle his cheek. Aisha apologizes for disrespecting him earlier. It was only because she was so worried about Ashley. Luminous forgives her and explains that she couldn't recognize him because he hid his powers on purpose. He also doesn't look exactly the same as he did in the dreams. He looks younger, like almost the same age as Aisha? He asks if she's okay since she used a lot of her power today. It seems like he's about to try and restore her mana, but Aisha is so embarrassed that the literal King of Light is touching her cheek that she shies away. I mean, you can't blame her. I know he's a super powerful spirit, but he is a little weird. When she asks about what happened earlier, Luminous explains that the sorcerers were using the artifact to collect negative energy from the ones who use it, as well as from the spirits they summon. Aisha is shocked and deeply concerned to hear this. Ever since she was born, she's been living side by side with spirits. Even before she could summon Lou, there were always specks of light surrounding her that she knew were on her side. So of course she cares about spirits just as much as humans. She asks if that was why Luminous came, because he was worried about sorcerers taking advantage of the spirit world. But he admits he also came to meet her. In reality, for once. He tells Aisha she's a very special person, as if she hadn't realized that by now. But is it just me, or is anyone else getting the sense that he's interested in her on a more personal level? He even gives her a bouquet to apologize for his attitude earlier. They're the same flowers that were growing on the cliff in her dream. So it was him. They can't be sure when the next they'll see each other, but I think we all know they'll meet again. For the next few days, Aisha resumes her holiday as scheduled, sightseeing and relaxing in the villa. Time passed in the blink of an eye, and now she's going home tomorrow. She's a little sad about not having made any friends, so when a maid comes to announce that Chloe, Rose, and Ashley are about to leave, she rushes out to say goodbye. They didn't realize she would be back to the palace so soon, so they decide to visit the southern capital together to celebrate their final day. Of course, since Aisha has lived in the palace all her life, she hasn't actually spent much time in busy cities like this. Everything seems lively and busy, and everywhere she looks there's something new to see. Ashley wants to buy some books about spirits. After their little adventure at the Bloom Mansion, they all want to try and learn to summon. Aisha gives them a little private lesson, advising them on the best books to pick. After a fun day exploring the town, they sit down for some cake in a precious little cottage. Aisha summons Lou so that she can try some, and Ashley opens up about what happened yesterday. She sincerely apologizes to the princess, but Aisha has already forgiven her for everything. All she asks is that in future, Ashley will work to get better on her own, without the help of artifacts. After all, Nias isn't really gone. Spirits are always with their masters. It's just that she can't see her now. That seems to reassure her quite a lot. At the end of their day out together, Aisha thanks the girls for taking her around the town and invites them to the Imperial Palace in future. Aw, look at that! She finally made some friends her own age! Finally, the moment comes when she has to leave this lovely southern paradise and return to her royal reality. She's already feeling sad about all the memories and people she's leaving behind. What she wasn't expecting was for Luminous to be sitting in the carriage waiting for her. See? I told you guys, he's interested in more than just her powers. After hearing her speak so warmly about spirits, he's decided to befriend her. What a pair! The King of Spirit World and the Princess of the Elmire Empire becoming besties? I can't wait to see how this turns out. While the two of them are getting friendly on the journey, the sorcerers from the ball are watching them roll away. And guess who's been their leader this whole time? None other than Marianne. What was she doing all the way down here meddling with some random girl like Ashley? Completely unaware of her ex-sister's meddling, Aisha spends the journey trying to recover from the shock of hearing Luminous, King of Light, saying he wants to be friends with her. Not only is it a bit stressful, but she's also worried about what will happen if she returns to the palace with a strange boy. Yeah, I can't see that going down well with Isis. Although, Emily the maid couldn't see him, so maybe he'll stay invisible. Just in case, the princess decides to set some ground rules. They can be friends, but she still needs some privacy. Luminous has never heard that word before. Looks like this friendship is going to be more complex than he expected. He says he wants to be by her side all the time, which is kind of intense. And as a spirit king, that might be a little difficult. So he decides to create a human identity to explain his presence whenever they hang out. With the help of the magic portal system, they arrive back in the northern capital in no time at all. A whole fleet of servants are waiting for them, but the person Aisha is most excited to see is her brother Isis, who is coming to pick her up despite his very busy schedule. He's such a good sibling. Luminous seems particularly curious about the relationship between the two of them, and asks if Aisha really likes him that much. Of course she does! He's kind, strong, and irreplaceable. While Luminous is still wrapping his head around this whole human emotions thing, she rushes out of the carriage to find the man of the hour just arrived on horseback. He's just as excited to see her, leaping off his horse to give her a hug. He's pleased to see her looking so well after her holiday in the south, and promises to come visit the villa himself sometime in the future. Isis offers to come and ride the rest of the way to the palace in the carriage with her. Uh-oh, the maid couldn't see Luminous, but does that mean he's invisible for everyone? Apparently not. When Isis opens the door, his expression suddenly changes. He demands an explanation from Aisha, whose mind has gone totally blank. He looks like he's getting angry, so she rushes in between the boys and promises there's a perfectly reasonable explanation. She makes up a story about this guy being Lou's brother and calls him Rune. She assures Isis that he's a very nice boy and says there's a good reason they're riding in the carriage together, although she doesn't actually give him that reason. Oh dear. She has got to get better at lying! She waits anxiously for her brother's response, but he's unconvinced. He seems to think they have fallen in love at a party, and now Aisha has brought him back to be her husband. Oh gosh, this is exactly what she was afraid would happen! Luminous watches as the situation devolves between the siblings, and eventually decides to step in. He introduces himself properly as Luminous, which Isis takes as some kind of joke. Obviously, he wouldn't believe that this random blonde dude is actually the King of Light Spirits, so he leads Isis to believe that he's some kind of priest instead. The prince is still pretty suspicious, but he seems to believe this a lot more than the last excuse and reluctantly climbs in the carriage. The boys butt heads immediately. Clearly, Isis has an issue with him riding the same carriage as his sister, but Luminous refuses to go separately. Does anyone else get the feeling they're going to do this a lot? Isis insists on dropping this uninvited guest to the Temple of Light at once, hoping to get rid of him. Poor Aisha is sat in between them for the whole journey and nearly passes out from stress. Luckily, the boys are still in one piece when they arrive. Aisha bids Luminous an awkward goodbye, wanting to be polite but not wanting to give away his true identity. She watches him walk away through the window while Isis apologizes for the misunderstanding earlier. However, he does warn her not to ride in carriages with strangers in future, which actually is pretty good advice. Even if he is the god of light, he doesn't exactly seem trustworthy. Or maybe that's just me. I don't know. I'm still hung up on all that stuff he said earlier. Anyway, although he's a little dramatic, Aisha can tell her brother was worried and apologizes for making him concerned. Even though she's vouched for him, Isis makes her swear in the name of the god of light that she won't get close to him. Oh, Isis, buddy, you have no idea what you're asking! Aisha obviously refuses and doesn't really explain why. When they eventually reach the palace, she has a huge wall of gifts brought back for her family. They went overboard with the villa, so she decided to pay them back with lots of little things that reminded her of them. Her parents are very proud and excited to hear that she even made some friends along the way. She promises to introduce them to her next banquet so they can meet the girls. It turns out her parents already heard about what happened at the ball, so they have a good idea of who exactly these friends might be. Aisha was a little worried about whether she did the right thing, considering the weight of her role as a princess, but her family are very proud of how she acted. They really are a fairy tale family. A few weeks pass by. With summer now in full swing, it's nearly time for one of the major festivals of the Elmar Empire. Ironically, it's actually a holiday dedicated to the god of light, since it's held on the longest day of the year. At this banquet, the head priest will make an appearance, as well as a new priest who has been causing quite a stir. He's said to be so powerful that he could even become the next pope. Can you guess who? Yup, it's Luminous. He's now going by the name that Aisha gave him, calling himself Rune and pretending to be a priest to fit the character he's invented. This is crazy. Does that mean he just sits in temples all day praying to himself? Actually, he also takes time out of that busy schedule to come and visit Aisha at the palace, totally unannounced as usual. Worried about rumors getting back to Isis, the princess asks her maids to clear out so he can stop hanging out on the balcony like a creep. Once he's inside, Aisha yells at him, asking if he's really the new priest everyone has been talking about. He seems surprised that she found out already. Since Aisha has been given the task of organizing the banquet alongside her mother, she had the guest list early. It turns out he wasn't even aiming to get recognized. He just showed the power of light to some priests for fun, and they ended up asking him to join them. Anyway, he actually came to ask how often they can see each other. He wants to respect her privacy, but hopes to visit every few weeks. Aisha agrees, though obviously she hopes he doesn't keep showing up on her balcony like this. She also apologizes for Isis's rudeness back when they first met. At this point, the princess is kind of wondering why the King of Light Spirits has been spending so much time here on Earth. But he just says he's curious. I guess it could get boring being in the spirit world all the time. When Lou wakes up from her nap, she gets the fright of her life seeing a literal deity have tea in their bedroom. She's so excited to see him in the human world that she asks 1,000 questions. But the one that's been on Aisha's mind the longest is suddenly answered when the subject of her dreams comes up. It turns out it wasn't actually Luminous she was seeing. Or not yet, anyway. He does frequently visit that cliff she saw, but the scene she described hasn't happened. Luminous thinks maybe the combination of their energies caused her to have a vision, or even a prophecy of some future event. That's kind of a crazy idea to drop on her out of the blue. Aisha desperately wants an explanation, but we already know Luminous isn't exactly the straightforward type. And just as she's about to ask him something else, her brother arrives outside her chambers, wondering why all the maids are hanging around outside. There's a chance Isis wouldn't notice her unannounced guest. Aisha has figured out that Luminous doesn't actually take a human form. His energy is so strong that for him, there's no distinction between being in the spirit and the material world. But she doesn't want to take the risk. Considering his reaction last time, I'd say that's the right choice. Luminous bids her goodbye, casually stepping out the window and disappearing. You know, as one does. Her brother comes in the next moment, asking why she wanted to be alone. She brushes it off, but he isn't convinced. I guess his instincts as a knight are too sharp because he can tell someone just came in. Uh-oh. He only calms down when Aisha points to Lou and says they were having tea together. Now that crisis is averted, the siblings head to the dining room where they're scheduled to have dinner with their parents. Aisha suspects something a little unusual is going to be announced, since her parents are usually too busy these days to have family dinner like this. Isis gives her a little hint, suggesting there might be a specially planned surprise at the upcoming banquet. Isis is determined to keep quiet, but the secret is out once they get to dinner. Her parents have decided at this banquet, Princess Aisha is going to debut. Wait, really? But she's only 14! Apparently, in this empire, it's not uncommon to debut in high society this early. Plus, since she's playing a big part in planning the event, her parents wanted her to take center stage. But they do offer to do it another day if she would be uncomfortable. For Aisha, it's a big decision. For a young girl, debuting is a huge deal. After she's been officially introduced to the nobles, she'll go around as she pleases, seeing friends and going out with an escort. Plus, she never got to debut when she was Alyssa, so this event is even more special. Of course, Aisha agrees, thanking her parents for the opportunity. Her father seems especially pleased and also announces that a new priest will come to bless her at the event. I think we all know who that's going to be. Well, she is the shining light of the Elmer Empire. Who better to bless her on her debutante than the god of light himself? Isis is going to have quite the shock when he turns up. Now she's more excited than ever about the midsummer banquet. Her mother is already planning her outfit. After all, it's her special day. She should be the prettiest girl in the Empire. After dinner, the mood changes a little when Isis and his sister take a walk in the gardens. After revealing what happened at the Blim Ball, she asked him to look into the artifact, particularly whether it came from outside their empire. Isis can't be sure, but it seems likely. In Elmer, artifacts have been forbidden for centuries, while in Edenbell, they have been secretly handed down for generations. And the teacher of the spirit class, the sorcerer who approached Ashley, was invited from Edenbell. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to put two and two together. Unfortunately, they have no proof, and no more clues to investigate. But there is one person who can confirm the origin of the artifact. Ashley. Aisha decides to invite her to the midsummer banquet so they can ask her some questions about the teacher/sorcerer who gave her the bracelet. She was going to invite her friends anyway. Now that she's going to be debuting, it will be even more special to have them there. But Aisha asks Isis to keep this whole thing a secret. If Ashley does confirm the link between Edenbell and the incident, then they should keep this whole thing on the down low. For one thing, she doesn't want Ashley to come under fire if it goes public. And for another, she doesn't want to tip off the Edenbell Empire that their suspicions are rising. Tension between the two nations is at an all-time high these days, with the truce having pretty much broken down ever since the poisoning. Timing is essential, so Aisha wants to move carefully to get as much information as possible before they strike. Looks like she hasn't forgotten about her revenge plan after all. Isis goes on to say how grown-up she seems when they talk about this kind of thing. His sister reminds him that this isn't her first life. That's why this age is such an important time. It's the first time in either life that she's going to turn 15. Soon, she will outlive Alyssa. I can't tell if that's exciting or heartbreaking. Isis's mood has become so serious that Aisha is worried he might have discovered something else in his investigation of the artifact. He says there's nothing to worry about, but look at that face! I love Isis, but just like his sister, he is not the best liar. Over the next few days, Luminous comes to visit a few more times, which means Aisha keeps sending her maids out and saying she wants to be alone. The house staff have started thinking she's hit puberty, if you get what I mean. When they raise the matter with Aisha, she gets all embarrassed and says they're wrong. Literally seconds later, her family burst in to ask the same question. Come on, people! Is there no privacy in this palace? She sets them straight right away, but no one quite believes her. Who knew that meeting with Luminous would cause such an embarrassing rumor? A few days later, Aisha is drowning in dresses, trying on style after style while the maids and seamstress fight over their designs. It makes it extra hard to pick when they get so emotional because she doesn't want to take sides. Exhausted, Aisha calls for a little break, grateful to have a cup of cool tea and some time to herself. She also receives letters from Rose, Chloe, and Ashley replying to her invitation. Rose's letter is just as chatty as she is in real life, while Chloe is as polite as always. Ashley's is a little more earnest. She's been doing better, despite her evil mother still being cruel. She's already guessed that Aisha wants to hear her testimony from back on the day of the ball, and also has something she wanted to discuss. Something that's been bothering her ever since. Well, that's suspicious as heck. Despite the shady situation with Edenbell, Aisha is truly looking forward to this banquet. All her friends are coming, as well as the great priest, his disciples, and the literal god of light himself. What more could a girl ask for? Plus, having Luminous bless her as a popular candidate to become the Pope will definitely catch the attention of the Edenbell Empire. The next day, the family meet with the current head priest to discuss the blessing, where they're formally introduced to Luminous, still going by Rune. Aisha's father seems to have a good feeling about this young priest. Until he starts talking back to him informally. Yikes, so much for his future career prospects. Fortunately, he corrects himself just in time, though he does keep looking slyly in Aisha's direction. Anyone who is watching closely would be able to tell there's something between them. Isis is doing a good job at holding his temper. She's kind of impressed that he's picked up the ability to communicate so naturally with humans in the last month or so. The only person he's been a little rude with is Isis, and well, I guess you can't blame him for that. They spend the rest of the meeting discussing preparations for the debutante, and afterwards, they take a walk through the gardens. Isis and Luminous have another tense interaction where the god of light treats him more like a kid than a crown prince. Aisha watches nervously from behind, walking beside the head priest, who has been speaking very highly of Luminous all day. He's also very proud of Aisha. Having known her since she was a child, he feels honored to have watched her grow into such a talented and graceful young princess. Aw, he seems like such a nice old man. That evening, Aisha is alone in her bedroom, trying to continue preparations for the banquet when she gets sleepy. Her head starts to droop, but before she can bang it on the desk, Luminous appears out of thin air and catches her. Okay, is it just me, or is anyone else starting to think he's actually always by her side and only chooses to show himself every once in a while? Aisha suddenly wakes up, flustered. She compliments him on how naturally he spoke today. Apparently, he just watched the way she interacted with people and quickly learned the rules of human society. I mean, he is a god after all. He suddenly asks if the people he met today are precious to Aisha. He was especially surprised to see her speaking so warmly with the head priest, even though he's not a member of her family. Although he's got the speech down, human relationships are clearly still a mystery to the king of light spirits. In the middle of a casual conversation about love and loved ones, Luminous suddenly remarks that there's still some darkness in her heart. Does that mean, can he see the truth about her past life? Aisha is so stunned that she doesn't know what to say. Luminous drops the subject and tells her to sleep, lightly poking her forehead. Was that a blessing? He's going to have to practice a lot if he doesn't want the banquet to be that awkward. The next morning, Aisha wakes up practically glowing, probably thanks to Luminous. She's also feeling full of energy and joy, though she hasn't forgotten what he said last night. Lucky for her, there are plenty of distractions. It's the day of her debut, and she still hasn't picked a damn dress. She still doesn't want to upset anyone, so Aisha shifts the decision to her mother, who is getting ready in the royal chambers. The princess spots a gorgeous white gown in the corner of the room, the dress her mother wore for her own debutante. Oh, come on. It would be criminal if she didn't wear that. Aisha becomes curious and asks her mother what that day was like all those years ago. When she was younger, Iris lived in the north, where it was always cold and snowy. She picked a day in the summer for the event, hoping to get some sunshine and a good turnout. But what do you know? It started to rain. She was so upset, almost no guests turned up, except the crown prince himself, who agreed to be her dancing partner and turned the whole day around. Wait, wouldn't he have been married at that time? I'm not sure the timelines are adding up here. Anyway, after hearing that story, Aisha just has to wear the dress. It even matches her eyes perfectly. And that's it for today, guys. What did you think? As always, don't forget to like the video and comment for the next part so we know you want more. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications for updates. See you in the next one!